Okay, hello everybody. I'm Camilla from Sweden, and I'm really glad to come here today and present my dissertation work. It's about cooperation between child psychiatry, social services and school in one community in Sweden. And the cooperation is about children with complex disorders, I have called them. I'm almost done with my dissertation. I will take my Ph.D. degree in December. And I'm really looking forward to that, I can tell you. So, a little about why I have did this study then. When I was working in child psychiatry, there were a lot of complaints from social services and schools on child psychiatry and the way we in child psychiatry cooperate with other organizations when there were children with a lot of different problems. Child psychiatry were quite satisfied themselves about how the way they were working, but social services and school were very disappointed on the way child psychiatry act. And in the whole Sweden there are a lot of discussion during the last 10 or 15 years about this, that human service organizations does not cooperate enough, especially organizations that works with children. So it's not only in this community where I have done my study, it's a problem. It's a problem in the whole the country, in Sweden at least. So when I got the possibility to do a research, I chose to investigate this area about cooperation and to find out how it could be that child psychiatry was so satisfied and the other organizations were so discontent with child psychiatry. And I choose those questions here. When does child psychiatry cooperate with social services and school? And was there any specific disorders or diagnosis that automatically lead to cooperation? And when they started to cooperate, how does the cooperation process look like? What influenced the cooperation? And which were the implications of it? I have done a qualitative study, and I have focused on children between 10 to 16 years old in this specific community. And when child psychiatry decided if they're going to cooperate or not, or when they decided which kind of treatment they will offer to the child, all cases passed through treatment conferences in child psychiatry. So what I did was that I did observation during 1 year of treatment conferences in child psychiatry to find what kind of cases, what kind of problems child psychiatry choose to cooperate in. And I also hear there what kind of treatment they offer to different children. I got 16 families from these conferences, and I asked them if they wanted to participate in my research, and 8 said no, different reasons, and 8 said yes. So I did observations in the conference during 1 year, and then I followed 8 families during 1.5 years. And I did observations of these different kinds of meetings, cooperation meetings, between professionals, but even between professionals and families. And when they work together with treatment, I observed that too. And I did 46 interviews with professionals, the parents and the children in these families. Little information about the children. As I said before, the age is between 10 and 16. And it was 1 girl and 7 boys. And they got a lot of problems, these children. They had at least 4 of these diagnoses, which I have counted up here. So each child had at least 4 of these. And it was only 1 family who was unknown for child psychiatry. It means that 7 families have got a lot of different treatments from child psychiatry during many years before they decided to cooperate in these families with other organizations. From this picture, I will present the results from my study. During this year, when I was doing my observation in the treatment conferences, I heard about 216 stories about families. And I found out that there were no decision in child psychiatry that automatically said that if it's this kind of problems, for example, social problems or problems in school, you have to cooperate with school or social services. There were no such things, so there were no specific disorders that involved cooperation. Instead, it was the discretion of the professionals that gave space for each professional to take a decision if they wanted to cooperate or not in each case. So I found that the professionals who had worked during a long time did not suggest cooperation as much as the professional who had worked who had less experience from child psychiatry. When they decided to cooperate, I found out 3 phases. The first phase was a kind of starting phase, when the professionals, the parents, and sometimes even the child had discussion about what's the problem, what are we going to do, which organization will do what, and so on. And they tried to find out who were the professionals in each organization who could be the most important professional to cooperate with. And then suddenly it comes into another phase. I call that negotiation phase. And suddenly the families was not invited to these discussions. The professionals continued their discussions on their own, and they started to argue again, is this really something for us in child psychiatry or for us in social services? And who will do this investigation for the child? Will it be the psychologists in school or in child psychiatry? There was a lot of discussions. And they discussed during a long time, and then they decided how to do, and they decided how they looked at the problem. They found a kind of agreement in that. And then they invited back the family, and I call that the phase of work for change. They decided, okay, let's work for change the situation for the child now. And they invited the family back again. And then the family didn't recognize what the professionals were talking about. They didn't recognize the way the professionals described the problem. And they did not recognize the way they discussed and talked about the cooperation, which professionals were most important and which organization are going to do what. So the parents got very disappointed, and they had to do new agreements with the parents again, what they're going to do. So this process took a very long time before they really started to work with the change for the child. I pointed out a few things that influence the cooperation process. Aims and laws of the organization influence how different organizations handle the cases. For example, sometimes social services thought that one case was very important and one thing to do was very important, and child psychiatry said, no, we can't do that right now, you have to be more established in the family first, and we have to wait now, we can't act like this. It's good enough now, and don't be in such a hurry. It takes time, change takes time, they said. And there was also a difference between dependence of each organization. Social services and school needs more from child psychiatry. They were more dependent on child psychiatry than child psychiatry was from social services and school. The school need, for example, child psychiatry to handle the child in the classroom, and social services needed child psychiatry to get some kind of diagnosis as they think was necessary to get to help them. But child psychiatry thought that they could work in their clinic, in their room with the child, and there were no feelings and no discussion about we need to have school inside the room or social services inside the room. They were quite satisfied to work alone, and there were kind of different power positions in the cooperation in that way. The internal organization is also influenced the cooperation. Both social services and child psychiatry have organized with the judgment units. All new cases and new families, when they come, they meet a judgment unit, and there they have to judge if this is a case for psychiatry or a case for social services, and then they decide what kind of treatment and what they will do, and then send it to another unit, the treatment unit. And that was a kind of, what's the word in English? Okay, that was kind of hard, I said, for both for professionals in different organizations, but even for the families, because they didn't understand who was the professional they're going to have contact with. Was it the professional in the judgment unit or in the treatment unit? There are also different pictures of the problem, both between the professionals in the same organizations, but even between organizations, but also between professionals and the families. They describe the problem different. Often the professional thinks that there were something about how the parent took care of the child that influenced how the child acted, and the parents never talk in that way. They thought everyone that it was something with the child, so something wrong with the child, so someone had to come and help the child. And there was also something about this with competence of cooperation. It seemed that some people have more skills to cooperate than others. Both parents and professionals pointed out same persons as this professional is very good to cooperate both with organizations and with families at the same time. Implications then. Well, when the child when they decided in child psychiatry that this was a client for child psychiatry, they became a client there. But when the organization decided that, okay, we have to cooperate about this, then it became a cooperation client. And that means that the problem was so complex, so we had to be 3 organizations to handle it. Otherwise, we can't help you. And as I said before, it took a lot of time. It took a lot of time to decide if they're going to cooperate. It took a lot of time for families to be offered cooperation from child psychiatry, because child psychiatry tried to treat them by their own first. And when they decided to cooperate, it took a long time before they really started to work with change for the child. The families felt that it was hard to them to get what they really asked for. They didn't recognize the way the professional described the problem, and they had an idea. They had Googled, they had used internet and Googled and find out the way they think this was the best for our child, and they thought that the professionals did not listen to them and just decided on their own. So they felt it was difficult to get what they really wanted, what they really asked for. The professional described that there were some kind of both possibility and difficulties in the discussion they had. The possibility was that they can choose on their own what they want to do with the child. They were only their only professional judgment they had, and to do that kind of decision. Is this what kind of treatment will I give? I'm going to cooperate or not? But they also described that it was very difficult to don't know if it would be helpful to cooperate or not, or if it could be easier both for the child and for child psychiatry to handle this problem by their own. Both professionals and families describe feeling of powerlessness. The families felt that they didn't get the help, and if they get help, it took a very, very long time. And the professionals felt that they couldn't help the parents or the child the way that they wanted to. It became conflicts between professionals, both inside organization, but even between organizations, and conflicts between professionals and parents about the way to look at the problem. Some professionals described even a kind of support. When they felt insecure about what they're going to do in the case and with the child, they felt that cooperation could be one way to create more, to be more sure what they're going to do, and to be more sure in their professional judgment. In Sweden, there is almost some kind of magic feeling about cooperation. It's sometimes like cooperation is the answer of everything and help in every ways. But I think we have to be a little bit more careful, at least in Sweden, about this with cooperation. If there is more than one organization involved, I think that could be a good idea to think about cooperation. But we have to pick up the question, what do we want to attain as a professional, and what do the family want to attain with cooperation? What will the change be? So we really focus on the change. And when we decided to cooperate, I think it's important to let the family, the parents, be included in the whole process. If there is a kind of need of professional support, I think it's important to tell the family, okay, we're going to cooperate as we discussed, But this is not about to cooperate together with you, the other organization, and the child. We talk now about cooperation between professionals, just because we have to do that to feel sure in our judgment. And I also think it's important to, as child psychiatry have done, as I told you, they have waited for many, many years and tried everything first they had, and then they said, okay, what are we doing now? Let's cooperate. I think if we've got one case with a lot of problems that social services and schools also struggle with, it's important to think perhaps we can try cooperation in the very beginning instead. And as I said, to really pronounce and say that sometimes cooperation is about professional support. And that's good enough, that's too. In Sweden, I'm used to end up with this picture, and I try to do it here in Greece too. I would say I have worked a lot with cooperation, both when I work in child psychiatry and now when I work in social services, I do that too. And I think it's really exciting and really, really hard to do. And sometimes it is really good, and sometimes it is really bad. So that's the complex work. And what we have to be sure about is that cooperation is not the answer of everything. Okay, that's my presentation. Thank you.